With the animation complete then, we can now move on to exporting everything we've done so far to make it ready to be imported into Unreal Engine 4. The first thing we need to do is export the character itself without any animations on it. So I'm going to open a scene for that. And you just need to get one that is your completed character without any animation. So for me, it's this version 11 that I've got. So I'll open that. And if I move through the time slider, you can see no animation on there whatsoever. Now this really should just be a case of exporting it, but there is one thing that I want to correct, and I need to do it on this version. I don't need to do it on any others, just this one. And I'll try and show you what it is. There you go. As the light catches his face, you can see that the screen's not flat. It's got this kind of crease here that's not particularly nice to look at. So we're just going to fix that before we export. So let's just open the channel box. We're going to take the geometry out of reference and put this into face mode, like so. Then I'm just going to select the 4 faces in the middle, just take that glare off, and then I'm just going to press shift and full stop, and that will just select kind of all the screen like that. And then I'm just going to do mesh display and harden edge. There we go. So now if I go back into object mode and move that around, you can see that that now looks flat. It's just nicer to look at. Okay then, let's export this guy. So file, export all is what we need. And I'm going to create a new folder for all these files that I'm going to create. So I'm going to come out of my scenes folder for now. And I'm just going to come up to this kind of top level here. Third person character tutorial is what I'm calling it. I'll create a new folder there. And I'm just going to call this exported. And then we'll call this one Rob Mesh, because this is the kind of mesh that we want. And then just make sure that you've got the following settings on this one. So smoothing groups, yeah. Smooth mesh, yeah. There's nothing else that we need there. And for this one, we don't need animation turned on. So we can just click on export. You will get this warning, but we can ignore it. There's nothing there that we need to do with it. So we'll close that. Okay, that's the first one exported. Now we need to do one of the animations. So we're just going to open the scene. And we'll do them in the order that we animated them. So we'll start with the idle. So there we go. We'll open this up. I will save this because I made a change to the face. And here we have the idle. So let's just have a quick look at that. Cool. I just want to remind myself where this starts and ends. Okay, so it's not a big deal, but you can see I've got a frame set on 51, which matches 1, so it means we're only going to export as far as frame 50. So let's just, oh, not like that, frame 50, there we go. That's the cycle that I want to export. So we're going to do File, Export All again. You can see that it has remembered where I want to put it, which is very helpful. We're going to call this one Rob_idle. And this time, I think you have to include the geometry, so I'm not going to turn that off. But we do need to export the animation. So we'll tick the box there. And then it's this bit here that we really need to worry about. So we do want to bake the animation. We're going to set the start and end frames. So 1 and 50 is what we decided on. And we are going to resample everything. And that will do it. We can now click on export for this one. Lovely. And we repeat this for the next two. So File, Open Scene. And now we're going to do the walk cycle. Again, I just want to double check where this starts and finishes to make sure that I'm not duplicating any frames. So let's just turn a controller on to see. Yep, so there's a frame on 25, which means 1 to 24 is probably fine. So we're going to do File, Export All. This one's going to be Rob_walk. Everything has been remembered from the last time we set this up. So bake animations on, we just need to set the end frame. So frame 1 to frame 24 and then export. Lovely. So we'll close that and then we're going to do the run cycle next. So open scene, let's open the run. Yeah, that's working fine. So what we need to do now is just double check where I've got the frames looping. Yeah, it went up to 23, so 1 to 22 is what I want. file, export all, rob_run, frames 1 to 22, and then export. Okay, so now we're going to do the jump. This is going to be slightly different. Let's get it opened up first. So there's the jump. So we have set one keyframe on this, but I just tested this to see what would work. It won't let us do this if we export just one frame. We need to do two. Otherwise, it doesn't see it as an animation take, which is what we need. So let's set that up. So file, export all. This is going to be Rob. Well, this is actually a fall, so we'll call it fall. And we can just use it as the jump. So Rob fall, and we're going to do frames 1 to 2, and that'll at least give us an animation take. And then we export. And that's it. That's everything that we need. What I'm going to do is just make one more change to the way that I have got all my files set up, so that when I'm in Unreal Engine, I only need to be looking in one folder. So here's the folder that I've got set up. Here's all the animations that I've just exported. And what I want to do is just go into my robot character. I'm going to go into source images and just take this head texture. So I'm just going to do a copy of this. And we're just going to drop this in exported because we're going to need that texture as well. So that now puts everything we need for this step in the same folder. And that will do it for this video. In the next one, we're going to create a new Unreal Engine 4 project and set about getting things imported. So I'll see you there for that. Now that we have got everything exported from Maya, we're now done with Maya, and it's time to get into Unreal Engine. So you can see that I have already taken the liberty of opening Unreal Engine, so you don't have to wait for me to do that. And we're at the Select or Create New Project screen. For this, we're going to create a new project. So we're going to go down here to New Project Categories, and we're going to do Games. And then we'll click on Next. And as we're setting up a third-person character, we are going to use the third-person template because we don't want to set up absolutely everything from scratch, such as the controls. We just want to be setting up the character. So third person is perfect for this. And then we're going to leave absolutely everything else the same. What I'm going to do though is just save this to a location that I can share with you lot quite easily. So I've chosen the third person character tutorial folder, which is the one that I'm making available to you if you follow the link in the video description, and it's called Rob. So you'll have access to any blueprints and things that I create as well, should you want to download them. Okay, let's create a project. Okay, that's the project set up then. If I hit play, you can see there's already a character in there. It's the default UE4 mannequin. I don't think he's got a name. I think someone should give him a name. But there you go. That's the one that we're going to be replacing. We don't actually want that one. So let's set about importing our own character so that we're ready to set him up in the upcoming steps. So I'm just going to move up to the content folder. So right up to the top level for this. And we're going to create a new folder. So let's right click. We're going to go to new folder. I'm going to call this one character_Rob. Nice and easy. And then we're going to create another new folder within that. So I'm in my character Rob folder. We'll make a new folder. And this one's going to be called Rob_mesh. Beautiful. And then within that folder, so we're going to go into the Rob mesh folder. As well as the mesh in here, we're going to need the textures and materials. So we're going to create one new folder here, and we're going to call this materials. We're actually also going to store a texture in here, but as there's only one, I don't see the need to separate that into two different folders. So let's go into the materials folder then. And the first thing we'll do is just import that texture. So let's go to add or import. We'll click the button there, and we're going to import to this folder. So let's click on that there. And now we need to find where we saved that to. So you can see that I have already been put almost in the right folder. I'm looking for this exported folder, and there's the head texture. So we'll open that up, and that's now imported, and it just needs to be saved. So I'll just click on Save All, and you'll see this asterisk disappear when I save it. There we go, that's now in the project. Now we're going to go back to the mesh folder, and we need to import our character. So let's right click and import. We're going to find Rob Mesh, click on open. And now it's really important that we get these settings right. So we need to tell Unreal Engine that this is a skeletal mesh. So we'll click on that. We'll leave the import content type as it is. The only other thing that I really want us to change is if we go all the way down. I don't want to create a new material, so do not create. And I do not want to import textures. We're going to do that manually so we've got more control over it. And then at this stage, we should just be able to click on import. Okay, we'll get this warning, but it's not a problem. So we'll just close that. And we can see our Rob Mesh. Let's just open it up. There he is. So you can see he's got no materials on him yet, but he's come through. All his body parts are in the correct place. So that is going to work. So we can just close that for now. And what we need to do now that he's in there is to get his materials made and applied so that he looks as he should. So let's go into our materials folder. I'm going to right click, create a new material, and we're going to call this one M for material underscore, and we'll call this white plastic, if I can spell. Cool. And we'll set this one up first. So I'll double click on this to open it. It's a really, really easy material to make this. So I'm just going to right click and do a constant 3 vector, I think. And this basically just gives us a colour. So we're going to plug that into base colour and then click on this value here to make that white. And when this catches up, you'll see we've now got a white material. What we also want to do is just create a constant, which is this one here. And this can have a value between 0 and 1, which is going to control how rough our plastic is. You can see that there it is very, very glossy. Let's put it on the cube. You see that that's quite reflective. I don't want it to be quite that glossy. So we're going to give it a roughness value of something like 0.2. Yeah, that ought to do it. And that's that first material made. So we'll save that one. We also want a black rubber. So we're going to create another new material. M underscore black rubber. And then we're going to double click on this. Just move that over there. And then we're going to do a constant 3 vector. Drop that into base color. And we're actually just going to come slightly off of black for this. Only slightly. And then we're going to add another constant to control the roughness. So we'll plug that in. And this one wants to be quite rough. We're going to go 0.8, which would be 80% rough. And rubber doesn't really reflect, so there you can see that's now working out quite nicely. So we'll save that one too. I can close that. And the final one that we need to create is the one for the head. So we're going to go for new material, M underscore, we'll call it screen. Open this up. And for this one, we're going to need a texture. So I'm going to right click and search for texture sample. There it is. And here we are looking for this head texture image. And we're going to plug that into RGB. And let's just put this on a plane so that we can see how it looks. There we go. Pretty nice so far. We're going to need a constant for the roughness. And we want this to be a fairly shiny screen. So let's go for 0.2, I think. Yeah, it's got like a matte coating. Let's go 0.15. Slightly smoother than that. Okay. And one thing that I want to do, this is completely optional, but I like the look of it. I want to make the eyes glow a little bit. And for that, we need to use the emissive color. And we're going to multiply it. So I'm just going to right click and add a multiply node. And the result of the multiplier is going to go into emissive color. And then we're going to take the color of the texture and put that into A. And you can see that already that's having an effect. And then I'm going to add a constant to B. And any number, so at the moment it's multiplying this by 0 and it's having no impact. If we now multiply this by, let's say, 3, you'll see that that kind of brings the eyes to life and makes it look like there's a lit screen there. And you can experiment with whatever number you want there, and you can always change it later. But that is the basic material. So we'll save that. And we can close it. Okay, so you can see now that we have 3 materials. If you've been paying attention, you will notice that the metallic material that we also need, we have not created. And the reason for that is because there's already a chrome material in Unreal Engine. So we're just going to use that instead of making a new one. So now what we need to do is assign the materials to our character. So let's go back to Rob Mesh. And we'll open this. And over in the top left corner here, you can see we've got 4 material slots because of the way that we textured him earlier. And so now we need to just make sure that we put the right materials in the right place. So what I like to do is click on Isolate, and that will show us what each material is. So this one here is clearly the white plastic. So we'll do this drop down and just start typing white. And there's white plastic. And then we're going to do this one here, which appears to be the chrome. So if we type chrome, there it is. And then the next one, if we isolate it, this is the black rubber. So we'll add that. And then finally, it's going to be the screen. Cool. And now when it all comes together, we have our character set up and properly textured in Unreal Engine. So far, so good. But next, we need to make sure that we've got the animations imported as well. And in order to do that, we're going to go to the Character Rob folder. So we've got the Rob Mesh. We're going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this one Rob_anims, which is short for animations. So we'll go into here. And this is where these animations now need to be imported. So what we're going to do is right click, and we're going to go to import to this folder. And because we've already been importing from this folder here, it's taken me to the right place. And we'll start with the idle, Rob_idle, and click on open. And again, we need to make sure that we get this right. So it is a skeletal mesh, but this time we don't need the mesh because we've already got one. So we can turn that off. But what we need to do is tell it which skeleton to attach the animation to. So this little drop down now, there's the original UE4 mannequin, and there's our Rob Mesh. So we're going to tell it to go onto that one. For the animation length, we're going to change that from exported time to animated time. The reason for doing that, the exported time should work, but I noticed it was importing duplicated frames. So we're changing it to animated time, and that seems to sort that out. And then all we need to do is click on import. And then you can see that that has imported the animation, and if we double click on it, we should see that that is up and running, which it is. So now we've got our character, materials, and one of the anims set up. So we'll just save that so that it's in there. And now we need to import the rest. So we'll go to right click, import, and this time we're going to do the walk. So we don't want the mesh, we do want to attach it to the Rob, and nothing else needs, oh yeah, animated time, it's remembered from last time. So let's click on import. We'll double check that that's working as expected. Yep, we've got a walk going on there. So we'll save that. Next we're going to import the run. So import, choose the run, open. So don't import the mesh. Do put it onto our friend Rob. And make sure that it is on animated time and click on import. Give it a quick check. Looks good to me, and click on save. And then one final one, we're going to import, get the fall. So we do not need to import the mesh, we do want to put it on the Rob Mesh, animated time, and import. And then we double check. Yep, that is doing the job, so we'll save that as well. Okay, that's going to do it for this step. We have now imported everything that we need. We've got the character, materials, and all the animations ready to start putting this guy together moving forward. In the next step, according to my notes, we are going to be putting together a blend space, which is going to allow us to have the character blend from his idle state to go to walking and then up to running, depending on how hard the player pushes the analog stick when they're playing the game. So I'll see you in the next step for that. Now that everything is imported, it's time to set up this blend space to blend between the animations that we've got, apart from the fall, which we don't need. Okay, so here's what we need to do. We're going to right click in our anims folder. We're going to go up to animation, and we're going to choose blend space 1D. And we need to choose which skeleton we're going to attach this to, which is going to be our Rob mesh skeleton. And we're going to call it Rob underscore BS, BS of course being for blend space. There we go. So let's open this up. And this is what it looks like. And down here is where we can blend our animations together. So you can see at the moment we've got these kind of 4 increments. And they represent sort of how hard the player is pressing on the analog stick. So if they're pressing it about halfway, 50%, this is what animation to show. So at 0%, we need it to show the idle. So what we'll do, you can see all the animations are listed here. We'll take the idle and we're going to drag that over here. And you can see that now it's doing our idle. By the time they get to 25%, we want him to be walking. So we'll get the walk animation and we'll drag that over here. And now if I just hold shift and move my mouse side to side, you can see, especially here, so here is where there's nothing on this value, and then as we go up to 25, it blends into the walk. Brilliant. And so at 75%, we're going to have the run. So I'm just going to drag that to here. And then you can see that if we go down to the walk here, so I'm just holding shift again, there's the walk, and as we move up to the run, there you go, you can see that it blends into the run. Perfect. Okay, one thing that we're going to need to change is what the horizontal axis, so this is just a graph, we need to change what the horizontal axis is called so we can access this later. So I'm just going to name this speed and press enter. And I actually want the walk to start a little sooner. So what I'm going to do is change the number of grid divisions to 5. And that means that this now starts at a speed of 20 instead of 25. It also means that this now happens at 80. So it just adds a few more points. You can add as many as you want. We are probably going to come back into this a little later because the maximum axis value is set to 100. And I don't think that's going to be enough. But we're going to leave it where it is for now. And that's the blend space complete. So now if you just hold shift, you can start from your idle, move up to a walk, and then go all the way up to a run. Lovely. Okay, make sure you save that. We can close the blend space for now. And in the next step, we're going to set up an animation blueprint. In this step, we're going to set up the animation blueprint. So what we've done so far is we've told Unreal Engine how to blend between our different animations. But we've not really told it when to blend them. And we've not told it which animations to play and why. Like, for instance, it doesn't know when to show the falling animation. And the animation blueprint is how we give it all of those instructions. So in our Rob Anims folder, we're going to right click, go to Animation, and find Animation Blueprint. The parent class, we're going to choose Anim Instance, and it needs to happen to our Rob Mesh skeleton. So we'll click on OK. I'm going to call this one Rob underscore Anim BP. So Rob Animation Blueprint. Lovely. So we need to open this up. And everything in this window deals with which animation is shown and when. So this bit here, the result is whatever the final pose that we want to show is going to be. So we have to plug something into this, and we're going to create something called a state machine. So I'm going to right click here and start typing state machine, and then we can see add new state machine pops up. So we'll create that. I then want to just rename this. So I'm going to call this locomotion, which just deals with how the character moves. And the result of this is going to be what plugs into here. So even though we've done nothing yet, that is going to be the result. So we'll just plug that in now. And then we're going to double click on this to open it up. Okay, so here's our entry point. And what we're going to do is just drag out of this. We're going to add a state. And we're going to call this idle walk run. Oops, that's very annoying. So let's just make sure that we don't have random capitalized letters. Idle walk run, there we go. And then we're going to open this up. And what we need to happen in here is the blend space needs to play. So we're going to get this. We're going to plug that into the result. And we need something to drive this. So we're going to have to reference this somewhere so that this speed changes depending on what the character does. And the way that we're going to do this is just right click on speed and we're going to promote this to variable. There we go. So now whenever this variable changes, it's going to feed into the blend space, which is going to change what animation is played, which is going to go to the animation output pose, which is very good. So if we now compile, the character should start to idle. That's because this speed variable is currently set to 0. There you go, you can see that that's set to 0. And because there's nothing else to drive it, that means that the output pose just becomes idle, which is good. So far, so good. If you want to see this in action, though, you can just go over to speed here, drag to the right, and as we move this up, oh, that's very upsetting for it. There you go. It doesn't like to do that in real time, apparently, but there you go. We can now see that that's the walk. If we up that again, it'll go to the run. So we'll just set that back to 0 for now, and we'll compile. Okay, so that tells us how to have him idle, walk, or run. But it doesn't really tell us whether or not he should jump. So in order to do that, we're going to need to set a couple of things up. So let's just go back to locomotion. There we go. And we're going to need a condition of whether or not the character is in the air to do this. So now that we've got this set up, what we need to do now is create some logic to drive all of this. So we're going to go to the event graph up here. And you can see that it gives us these two notes to get us started, which is exactly what we want actually. And these are going to work together. So the first thing we want to do is see, is this valid? So make sure that this is actually the character we're using. So we're going to, first thing we'll do is that. What we also need to do is get the velocity of the character. So from this pawn owner, because this is our character, we're going to get velocity, which is basically just the speed that our character is moving at. From the return value of this, we're going to get the vector length. So vector length. And we're going to use that to set the speed. So let's get our speed variable and we're going to set it with what that is. And so that now, the actual speed that our character is moving across the level is going to become our speed variable to drive the blend space. So that right there should do it. So I'm just going to comment this up so I know what's what. So I'm just going to select these three nodes here and press C. And we're going to do set speed. Nice. And then just with these two here, let's just make a bit of space for them. Comment C if pawn owner is valid. Just so that we know what everything's doing. Let's just compile that and make sure it's all working. We're not getting any errors, which I have to say to you is a very, very good sign. Okay, so at the moment, this would now work perfectly to get the character running around. Although we do need to set up the character blueprint, but if that was all done, he would run around. But what he wouldn't do yet is jump. And we're going to need to set that up as well. We need a variable to work out, is the character actually in the air? And we're going to do that in this logic as well now, just to get this set up. So out of here, so out of get pawn owner, we need to find something else. We're going to get a movement component. So get movement component. Lovely. And the movement component that we want is falling. Like that. So this return value then we're going to promote to a variable like that. And we're going to call that variable is in air question mark. Okay, so that is going to be whether or not our character is currently in the air. And we're going to set that using this. So actually what we're going to do now is before we do the speed, we're just going to cut in with this. So we're going to take our execution from here to set that and then to set that. So what we're doing now is every time the animation blueprint is updated, it's going to check whether or not the character is in the air, and it's also going to set the speed. So let's comment this is character falling. Okay, and that is pretty much all the logic that we're going to need for this now. So what we also need to do is just set up the jump. So let's go back to our locomotion, and out of the idle walk run, if we drag out of here, we can add another state. Oh, I didn't rename it properly. Let's rename it, and I'm going to call this jump. I'm calling it jump, but it's really falling. I want to keep it easy. And what we'll do is just open this jump, and we need to make sure that whenever this is happening that it plays the fall animation. So let's just have that in there. And that's it. That's all we need to do for that. So let's just compile that. There you go. That's all set up. And because I've compiled it, you see it's giving me a warning that this will never happen because I've got nothing set up to make it happen. So we're going to go back here now and we're going to make it happen. This little arrow here is what we call a transition condition. So we need to set something on this to tell it whether or not to transition from here to the jump. So here we're going to say, when is it allowed to go from idle walk run to jump? We'll double click on this, and it's going to be whenever is in air is set to true. So if we compile that, it takes away the warning. So that's good. Every time our character is in the air, you're allowed to go to the jump animation. And then what we need to do is get this to go back. So we'll go like that. So this is now, you see we've got arrows pointing out. So to go from here to here, we set a condition, and then from jump back to idle walk run, we need another one. So it's going to be is in air, and we'll get that. And then we're going to need a not boolean, like that. So whenever is in air is not true, there we go, that is now going to transition back to the idle walk run. So now what we're going to do is compile that. And that's it then. We have now set up the animation blueprint. We have all the conditions to play the animations so that now when we're in game, Unreal is going to know which animations we want to play and when, which is all very good stuff, I think. So moving forward, what we'll be doing next is setting up the actual character blueprint. This is the thing that we can put into the game. So I'll see you in the next step for that. In this step, what we're going to do is now set up our character blueprint. So we're just going to save and close the animation blueprint. That has served its purpose. Let's go back up to our main character folder, and we're going to create a new folder here for our main blueprints. So we're just going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Rob_BP, because this is where our blueprints are going to go. So we'll go into this folder here. In this folder, we're going to right click. We're going to create a new blueprint class. And the obvious one for this one is going to be a character because that's what we're creating. So we'll click on that. And I'm going to call this one Rob_BP. This is our main character blueprint. And we'll open that up. By default, you get a capsule which kind of represents your character in 3D space. This is how they'll collide and things. You've got an arrow which just kind of points which way is front on. And you've also got mesh, which is not showing anything yet because we haven't chosen one. And there's also a character movement component which has lots of defaults for how the character moves and behaves, which we'll change some of those later, but we'll leave them at default values for now. So if we go to the mesh component here, there's a space for skeletal mesh, and here we can choose our Rob mesh. And then he goes in, and then we obviously need to make a few changes because he's too high up and he's also not facing the right way. So let's just bring him down, and we need to get his feet pretty close. So let's rotate him first. So I'll just put my rotate tool on by pressing E. I'm going to rotate him 90 degrees so that he's facing front. And then I'm going to change my perspective view to a front view. And then you can see here that his feet aren't really lining up with the bottom of the capsule. So what we'll do is just turn the snaps down on the move to 1. And we'll zoom in real close, and we're just going to line this up with the bottom of the capsule. That should mean that it connects with the floor properly. Okay, now what we're going to do is just zoom out. The capsule's about the right size and shape, so we'll leave that as it is for now. And we'll go back into a perspective view. Now we need to tell this blueprint which animations to use. So it's already expecting to use an animation blueprint, which is good because we created one. We just need to tell it which animation blueprint we want it to use. So if we go to anim class, and there's the Rob anim blueprint we created, we'll click on that, and straight away, because there's currently no value in the speed, it will default to idling, which makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, now what we need to do is set up a way for the player to see the character, to have sort of inhabit 3D space. And to do that, we need to put a camera in there. And this is kind of a two-part process. So first of all, we need to create what's known as a spring arm. And this is kind of how the camera will attach to the player. So this will be how far back it is. It will be whether or not it clips through walls, etc. I'm just going to put it up in terms of height, if it lets me, to about the neck, something like that. So that puts the spring arm in place. Then what we need to do, with the spring arm selected, we're going to add another component, and that's going to be a camera. There we go. And that puts that in place. If we want to move it, it's better to select the spring arm and move it all up together. So I think I'm going to go slightly higher, kind of head height, like that. And whilst we've got the spring arm selected, we just need to turn on use pawn control rotation, which means that it gives the character control over the rotation of the camera. So essentially using your right analog stick or your mouse is going to allow you to control what the camera's looking at. What we also need to do is just open the class defaults, which is just located up here. And we're just going to turn off use controller rotation yaw. And that's just going to allow us to keep control of that camera as well. And one other final thing we want to do, just to make sure that the camera behaves as we expect, is go to the character movement component here. And then we're just going to scroll down. We're looking for the rotation settings section, character movement rotation settings. And we want to turn on orient rotation to movement, which means that when the character starts moving around, the camera will sort of default going back to straight behind them, which kind of helps to keep the player oriented at all times. Okay, so that sets most of it up. We'll just compile that for now, make sure we're not getting any errors, which we're not. What we need now is, in our event graph, we need the logic that's going to allow us to control the character. Now, I could spend the next 20 minutes getting you to do this one step at a time, but we're going to do a little cheat here. One of the reasons that we use the third person blueprint is that if we go into this, here's the default character, the mannequin. And we're going to go into their event graph and just take all the logic from here. It's already got the gamepad input set up, the movement input, mouse input, jump. It's all there, which just means that we don't have to set this up from scratch. So we'll select it all and we'll do Control-C for copy. We'll then go to our blueprint. We're going to delete these nodes here because we don't need them. And then we'll paste with Control and V. There we go. So then that gives us all the logic we need, but if we try and compile this, you'll see that we get some errors, and the reason is that we need two variables. There's one called base turn rate and one called base lookup rate, and these are both float variables. So if we go into variables and add, so by default this thinks it's going to be a boolean. I disagree, it's going to be a float. And we need to get the name, so it's going to be, the first one is base turn rate, base turn rate. So just type it out, don't put any spaces in, but do make sure you capitalize the first letters. Press enter, and that will be the first one. Then we'll add one more variable. By default this one's going to be a float because we just used it, and this is going to be base lookup rate. So base lookup rate. And then we'll compile the errors go away because these variables are now there. We do need some default values for these variables. So I'm going to go for about 90 on each. You can always come back and change these later once you've experimented. These just deal with how quick the character will change direction. So if you move from running forwards to running left, how quickly will the character blueprint rotate to the character? Okay, so let's compile that again. And believe it or not, that's it done. That is our entire character blueprint setup. And in fact, that's the entire character setup. In the next step, what we'll need to set up is the game mode blueprint, which basically just tells Unreal Engine which character we want it to use. So now what we're going to do is switch out from using the default mannequin and switch to using our default Rob character. So I'll see you in the next step for that. Now it's time to create the final piece of the puzzle really, which is going to be a game mode, which is going to tell Unreal Engine what character we want to use to replace this mannequin character basically. So let's get that set up. So I just need to, I've got an asterisk up here, so I need to save this, and I can just close these for now, and we'll close the Unreal 4 third person character. I'm done with that as well. Okay, so I need to go back to my character Rob folder and into the blueprint folder, and we're going to create a new blueprint in here. So right click, blueprint class. This one's going to be a game mode base. And I'm going to call it Rob underscore game mode blueprint, so that we know what that is. And then what we're going to do is open it. I want to be in the class defaults, which I am. And I want to set the default pawn class to my Rob BP. And that's all we need to change in there actually. So we'll just compile and save that, and we can close it. Then what we want to do is go to the world settings. So the world settings should be over here, but if you've not got them open, you should be able to get it from here. World settings is just there. And in this section, there's a game mode here, and we want to tell this to use our game mode that we've just created. So we're going to go to game mode override, and it's going to be Rob game mode blueprint. There we go. So that sets that up. That will only do it on this level though. So if we want to kind of do it for the whole game, if we just go to edit and project settings, and go to the maps and modes section, we can just change the default game mode from third person game mode, which is the default one, to our Rob game mode blueprint. That's all good. So now we can close that again. And now what we're going to do, let's just position ourselves kind of here. We're going to put in our character, and you'll see he's below the floor until we let go, and then he pops into place. That's good. And now if we test, this is still not going to work. You can see if I test, it's still going to default to Unreal Mannequin, which is no good to us right now. So what I'm going to do is select my character here, and if we just go into his details and scroll all the way down to the bottom, we're looking for the pawn section. There it is. And we need to set auto possess player to player 0. Let's just try testing this again now. So we'll click on play. And now you can see that we have a character. He runs around. He's got his fall animation, jump works, everything is in place. So what we can do is just delete this default mannequin now, because he's just getting in the way. Get out of my way, default mannequin. And that's basically everything that we need to have done. I'm just going to show you one more thing before we move on. So I'm just getting my Xbox controller. I'll plug it into my PC. Hopefully it's going to work. And now with that plugged in, I'm just going to lightly touch the analog stick. So I'm only touching this a little bit, and it goes to the run animation really quickly. You can see that the character is actually not moving very far across the screen. And so the run kind of feels unnecessary. And so we're going to need to make a change to that. So that brings us to the end of this video, and an introduction to the next video, which is going to be fine-tuning and polishing what we've got. So I will see you in the next video, where we'll make our final changes to this character. We're almost done then. What we need to do now is just a little bit of final tidying up and polishing to make sure that this all works. So as we said, the run isn't really starting at the right time, and there's a reason for this. So if we go to Rob BP, and we go to our character movement section. What we're looking for is the max walk speed. This is how fast he can go, and it's currently set to 600, which means that at max speed we're moving at 600. Now that's fine. If we now go to our animation blueprint, specifically the blend space is what we're looking for, this axis only goes up to 100, which means that when the speed reaches 100, which is only 1/6 of full speed, it's already breaking into a run. So what we need to do is change this maximum axis value to 600, like so. And we'll just save that, and we're just going to duck that over here. Whenever you change, so if you want the character to move faster, so let's say we want to change that to 1200, then that's fine, but what you'll need to do is also go in and change this axis value as well. So now if we just make sure that everything is saved, it is, and we play. Now, if we move, let me just click in this window, move, so I'm just using my analog stick, you can see that as he's getting faster, it's taking him longer to break into the full run, and that just matches up a lot better. So if you want to test this, just make sure that you've got an analog stick, and it just means that there's less sliding of the feet along the floor. So that's that pretty good. I want to make one more change in the blend space. So in fact I'll just show you why I'm making the change first. If we just go back into here, so as he walks very, very slowly, because of the way that we've put the blend space together, it kind of looks like he's got a limp, because the idol's got his foot quite far back. Even when he starts to break into what you see, it still looks like he's hurt himself. So we're going to try and alleviate some of that. I'm not going to try and get rid of it completely, but I'll get rid of a lot of it. And it's actually, if we go into these blend samples, the walk is currently snapping to the grid. If we turn that off, we can tell it exactly where we want that to happen. So it's currently happening at a speed of 120, and we can bring that down. So let's say that when we get to a speed of 10, and you'll see that that is now much closer together, it should have broken into a full walk by then. So let's save that, and we'll just give that a little test. So there will probably still be a hint of a limp, but he should get out of that pretty quickly. There you go. So now I'm walking at about the same speed and the limp's already gone. So it won't go away completely. If you really just feather the analog stick, it can still be found, but it won't stick around for as long. And you can even play with those values even more to change that further if you so desire. Okay, that's one fix done anyway. What we're also going to do is add a double jump, just because I can and I like a double jump. So let's go into our blueprint, and we change this in class defaults. There are lots of things that you can change. I'm just going to change the max jump count from 1 to 2. Pretty straightforward. Let's give that a little test. So jump, once, jump, jump. There is now a double jump. Yeah! Now if we weren't doing this as a super fast, or as fast as I can make it course, I'd have done a slightly different animation to indicate that the second jump's happening. The other thing that I don't particularly like about the defaults is the jumps are too floaty for me. I like them to feel snappier, and also it's just not high enough. I can't even get up there. Oh, I can. I can only just get up there, but I can't get up here. So let's make some more changes to this jump. So we're going to go to the character movement component, and we're going to make some changes. So I want him to come down faster. In order to do that, I'm going to raise the gravity scale from 1 to 6. Now if we just made that change, it would, like, his jump would be even worse. So what we also need to do is go to, where's jump? So in the character movement jumping falling section, we're going to change the jump Z velocity to 2000. So to offset the fact that gravity is now stronger, the jump's also going to be stronger, and it will just make everything feel snappier as a result. So let's just compile that, and we'll give that a cheeky little test. So let's try this now. So jump, yep, so it goes up and down much quicker. Jump, jump. So I prefer this. You can obviously tweak this to whatever your preference is, but I like that it feels like something's happening immediately, and you can get down quicker. I find it easier to line up. One other thing that I will change though about the jump is, because this is meant to be a platforming character, you also want to be able to control them in the air, and that's this air control thing here. So if I just change that to 0.9, I'll compile that again and test one more time. Now, once I'm in the air, I can kind of change my mind a little bit. Like that. Which can be much better because it means that now if I'm about to miss a platform, I've got a way of correcting it in midair. So, that's the jump pretty much done with. There's one more thing that I want to look at. So if we just run into the wall, he buries his face quite far into it. And that's because the capsule's a little bit too thin for the character. So I'll make one final change. If we go to the capsule, which should be this here, I'll just go into the viewport. So select the capsule, and this has a radius. So the radius is set by default to 34. I find that if I set it to 50 for this character, it'll stop him from going as far into the wall. So let's now compile and play. And now if we just run him headfirst into the wall, that feels much better. Now he can just about get his face in the wall, but it's not as offensively bad. So there we go. That just feels better. You can see his feet look like they're just about contacting the floor. I think I need to just raise that capsule a little bit. So, or rather drop the character a little bit. Just do a couple, compile, play. Let's see if we can get him up on a platform to see if that's working. Yeah, that's now contacting the floor pretty well. So, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to call that an overwhelming success. So what you've done with me over the duration of this course is literally everything that is required to set up a character for use in Unreal Engine 4. You have modelled it, you've UV mapped, kind of, you've textured, you've rigged it, you've animated it, you've exported, imported, you've done the logic, you've set up the blend space, you've done the blueprints, and you've also tweaked it to your liking. That, I think, can only be considered a success. So, well done for finishing the course. I'm able to continue making these videos thanks to the ongoing support of my amazing Patreon community. If you'd also like to support Game Dev Academy via Patreon, then check out the link in the description below. Thank you.